to the Kingdom Connection. We're glad that you're here. We're excited to see a lot of new faces here, and we appreciate you coming. And I know we have a lot of rackers here, so I'm glad you could join us this morning. So we're privileged this morning to have Jeff Deverter and Angie Morehead from Rackspace. So if you'll give them a warm welcome. Many of you probably have heard the word Rackspace or know of this prominent company that's here in San Antonio. So I've asked Jeff just to give us a brief description of what does Rackspace do in that old mall over off 35.
So again, my name is Jeff Deverter. Really honored to be here this morning. Really been blessed by coming to these breakfasts over the past several months, and hopefully there's something today that will resonate with you guys. But as Joe asked, what is Rackspace? So Rackspace, Kurt's here. Sorry, I haven't seen Kurt long. Rackspace is what's called a managed hosting company, which means we host servers, or big fat computers, for our customers in our data centers, about 10 of them around the world. And then we also provide support for other major, what are called clouds, like Microsoft's and Amazon's as well. And then the Googles as well coming at us. So we just help customers be successful with those cloud computing technologies that they choose.
Right. And Jeff, what is your current role there now? What do you spend your day doing?
Whatever I want. Now, what I get to do is I'm the chief technologist for our Microsoft offerings at Rackspace. And so what that means is I sort of sit on a three-legged stool, which means I talk to Microsoft a lot about technologies they have coming out, figuring out if those are things that we're going to support for our customers. Spend a lot of time working with our customers to make sure that the technologies we have from Microsoft meet their needs and expectations, that our support meets their needs and expectations. And then the last tool is I spend a lot of time outside of the office speaking with what we call pre-customers, or in sales activities, or with analysts and so forth, getting to tell our story and how we're able to help our customers through what we call fanatical support.
I see the sign out there, fanatical support, so it's etched in my mind.
Must be a thing.
Yeah, it must be a thing, and I've had the privilege of knowing Jeff for many years in different contexts, so it's great to reconnect with him and see his passion for faith and work at Rackspace. A new person I've met just in the last months is Angie Morehead. So Angie, why don't you share what is your day-to-day role at Rackspace?
Sure. So thank you guys for having us, first of all. So I'm a leader in our support organization. So I lead a few teams of rackers, account managers, and lead techs that are dedicated account teams for customers. So they're responsible for the customer's relationship and overall experience.
Thanks. I want to kind of hit a little bit in terms of how they even got interested in seeing their faith becoming more integrated in their work. So I'm going to ask each of them to kind of say, what were some of the starting points or maybe catalysts that really prompted them to make a deeper connection in God's larger story in their work? So Jeff, we'll start with you.
Sure. So I started, a lot of it goes back to BLE, the organization that helps organize this morning. And I was invited about 10, 11 years ago to a 10-week study of what's called Book 1, and that is your faith at work. And I was obviously in the remedial group because it took us about 6 months to get through that study. And we were just digging into the meat of what that was. And the whole heart of that is really there's no compartmentalizing your faith. And it's so easy to look at professional Christians to go do the evangelism. Oh, I'm a missionary, I'm raising support, I'm going far, far away. I'm a pastor, I'm going to go to this church and I'm going to stand at the pulpit and share God's word. When in reality, as believers, it's not just about funding those folks, about praying for those folks as they go. It's about being the hands and feet of Christ. And so, through this whole time, and again, that's like 10, 11 years ago, God starts saying, hey Jeff, maybe you should start to lead a study at work. And I had a great list of reasons why it wasn't the right time. And was able to stall that for a good long while. And God eventually, and not to say that it was did nothing, but God was saying, there is more that you can share, there's more that you can do for His namesake, for God's namesake at Rackspace. And so I started to lead a study, and Angie was a part of that. We'll tell a bit more of that story in a little bit. But ultimately, it was about God starting very gently, tapping me on the shoulder, and then not so gently saying, it's the one place you spend most of your time outside of sleeping. And so there you need to be more outgoing about how I share my faith at the workplace.
Thanks. And Angie, I want to back up with you a little bit because I've heard a little bit of your story and just how your faith became active, in the past year or so. Would you share a little bit about that with us?
Sure. So I think, two kind of pivotal things happened. One was I was doing a Bible study at our house through our church, and the church introduced us to a new family. And the family was a military family. The father was in the Air Force, and he talked a lot about his job being a mission field. So he was an officer in the Air Force, and so he just that really just resonated with me. The notion of it being, his work being his mission field. And so he would say that, throughout the year that we would do the Bible study. So that was kind of one pivotal thing that just kind of stuck in my mind. And I thought, gosh, that's the same thing that I'm doing at Rackspace, but that sort of formalizes it and crystallizes it for me. And then the second thing was the Bible study that Jeff did, because you just don't, it's so rare that you hear a message about God and work. And so that was just, the book one was just the other thing that just kind of crystallized in my mind what my mission was. There's 6,000 people at Rackspace, and so that's my mission field. I've thought throughout my years, gosh, do I want to stay at Rackspace? Do I want to go do something for God? I'm on fire for God. Is he calling me to do something more directly related to the church? But what I've learned in the past, several years, and this last year has really just crystallized that I'm right where God wants me to be, that this company where I'm at, there's plenty of people who need God's light, to be God's salt and light. So.
Wow. So as you guys started this study, was this brand new to you, Angie? Was this you had a little bit of, exposure to it. How did you feel coming into this with other people? Had you ever done a Bible study, so to speak, in the workplace?
Yes. It was probably 8 or 9 years ago when we were at Data Point off of Wurzbach, and somebody invited me to a Bible study at work, and we sat in kind of a common area, and that was my first sort of introduction into God at work, and it was the first time I had kind of bridged those in my mind together. And it was a little awkward at first because we were in a common area and we were meeting early in the morning, but people would walk by, and we'd be praying or we'd have our Bibles open, and so, I was kind of looking around like wondering what they were going to think. But I got more comfortable with it as time went on, and a few months after we were starting, and I had in the mornings on the way to work, I'd been listening to Sarah Young's Jesus Calling, and just listening to it over and over, and it just is all about trusting God and finding peace. And it was just helping me so much that I thought, I know some believers at Rackspace. I'm going to start sending an email every morning. There's one for every day of the year, and so I started that with about 35, 40 rackers, and just over the years that's grown to about 250 now. And my goal, we have 6,000 people, so we're not there yet. We have lots of work to do, but it continues to grow, so that's exciting.
So are you saying that, is this every morning you do this? So every morning you send out an email to 250 people in your workplace with a devotional to it?
Yeah.
But I want to, it's just fantastic, but this is even a little better, because one thing that she started doing recently, I like to brag on her a little bit here, is there would always be the devotional, and there's a couple of verses, and I'd love to look through those verses. And I started to notice a few weeks ago, there's some text in blue beneath that. I thought, well, that's new. And so she started putting a prayer for everyone for the day in that. It's not there every day, but I'll admit I scroll to the bottom first to see if it's there.
But no pressure, Angie.
But it's very touching because it's a very honest prayer, and it's super encouraging if you're on that list to be able to see that and get that.
Well, I'll tell you guys that that started because a friend of mine, Hermes, who's here in the front, I asked him I found out that he was a believer about, 2 months ago or so. We had met, and so I asked him. That's one of the first things I'm trying to find out when I meet new people. And so I added him to the list in the morning, and he said, I have a challenge for you. I would like for you to, I'd like to hear something from you that you say, oh my gosh, I don't know. I'm going to pray about that. And that's what I told him, I'll pray about that. So anyways, that's how that got started.
Yeah, so as you guys started doing this, have you had some pushback or anything? Obviously, you're in a company, and there are certain respectful ways that you need to conduct yourselves in terms of honoring people who don't believe or maybe of other faith. How have you worked through that?
So, good question. So, one of the things is, as we've had these different studies, and it started last summer was when we really had we did book 1, and then I did book 2 in the fall, and Angie's going through the story with a group, and as we started into these studies, especially book 1, we send out the PDF. You got to print that and try to be very cautious with folks to say, look, we need to be good stewards of these resources. First of all, it's in color. Don't print it on the color printer at work. Kinko's. Because we don't want to, in any way to appear as though from, an outside group, a subgroup of the company, to be utilizing resources that are company resources for non-company things. It's just the right thing to do. You don't take the box of paper clips home, and you don't print out your Bible study stuff at work. And so we tried to make sure that everybody was very conscious of not utilizing Rackspace resources for this. Now again, we're in the buildings, we're using the building, but they keep it cool anyway. It's not like they cooled it for us. But as we did the summer study, and we had a good group there were about 20 folks who were committed to it, and there were about 12 on average who'd show up each week. And to get it started, I sent a note to Angie last May, and I said, can I co-op your list and say, and just offer to do a study? And she goes, of course, use the list. So I used the list. But then in the fall, we were getting ready into summer. We had a couple other studies to start, and I thought, we'll send it to the list. But there's also this list inside of Rackspace called SA Fun, and that's where you can tell jokes, you can sell something, you can, the debates that go on in there are quite entertaining. So I thought, well, I'm sending it to this list. This will be fun. And so then I did get a tap on the shoulder from HR, who's a wonderful Christian lady, but she said, somebody complained, hey, we can talk about everything except God apparently on that list, which is fine, but no major pushback, but I'll be honest, I kind of liked the fact that we got into a little trouble. We were pushing the bounds just a little, which also meant I was definitely outside of my comfort zone at that point too, because I was here, this is not the safe Angie list, this was not so SA Fun list.
And even one time on the list, sometimes, positive things come out of that besides the devotional. People send prayer requests and things like that. But and sometimes our CEO would send a note on Easter or on Christmas that they couldn't send to the whole company, right? So it was really special. But one time, a few times usually last year or the year before, there was some seemingly, could be considered political things. And as soon as they would send it to that safe list, but as soon as I read it, I'm like, oh man, it's gonna make somebody uncomfortable or make somebody mad. They're gonna disagree about that point of view, right? And so sure enough, after 2 or 3 of those, I got a tap on the shoulder too that said, hey, I know your list doesn't opt in, it's optional, so you can keep sending it. But can you just send a note to that list and just remind everybody just to keep it non-political? So.
Well, Jeff, you've been walking with God for a long time, and I know your pursuit of integrating your faith in your work has been a passion of yours. What's been one of the biggest struggles for you as you've tried to walk down that path?
For me, and as in a lot of things, and that's consistency. It's easy to let the details of the day drown out what God would have you do in a larger fashion. It even starts at the beginning of the day. I'd find that I'd come in off a quiet time in the morning, and I'd run in the mornings and listen to praise music. That's when I pray. And so I'm coming in on this daily spiritual high, and then I'd sit down at my desk, and the emails would just fill. And so one of the tactics for that was just to put my computer down, but then walk the building and just pray. Whoever I saw, whatever empty seat I saw, here's the finance group, let's go pray for those folks. There's the whatever group, let's pray for those folks. And that would just help to center my brain around the fact that this is God's place. There's no delineation between outside of work and inside of work. In fact, it's an opportunity to share in a place where the professional Christians, they can't go. We were joking this morning, you had me bring this, and this is, stuck is what it is. All right, what it is my badge. I may or may not be going to work today. All right, so this little doohickey right here, it's got my name on it, it's got my face on it, it's got a little RFID chip in it, and it's what lets me in the building. I go to Wayside Chapel. Pastor Roger Pupart is our pastor there. He didn't have one of these. He can't, the professional Christian can't come and share. Our missions pastor can't come share. He doesn't have one of these things. The only people who can go and share in that building during the day when a lot of people are going through some of the worst challenges and upsetting times, whether it doesn't matter what it is, personal or corporate, this is what allows us the opportunity to go in and to share. And show of hands, whose business in here has a card that lets them get in? If you forget your card, you don't get to go to work that day. So show of hands. Look at that. That's pretty powerful. You guys are in closed countries. You're in closed countries. Every bit of closed country is, well, you're not going to get, what's going to happen in China if you do something like that. But the professional Christians can't go there. Even if you don't have one of these, the professional Christians don't have the relationship, more important than this, that you guys have with your coworker. And your mission field can be, Angie with 200 and something people on that list and growing on a day-to-day basis, or one or two people who sit next to you who you know are hurting. There's your mission field. These are people, we get challenged by our pastors from a mission perspective, to make sure you know your neighbors at home. Have you been next door? Do you know their names? Do you know what's causing them to hurt? I don't say more importantly, but equally as important are those folks who sit in the desks next to you, who you have a relationship with, who you have a license to. Hey, you want to go have lunch? Go, we go to lunch and visit. If you're not comfortable sharing about God and what God is doing in your life, inside of those buildings, go have a coffee, go have a lunch. But you have access to those individuals. You've earned that relationship with them to be able to then share the most important relationship. I don't remember what the question was, but that's
That's a great answer.
Yeah, Jeff would say that all the time, like almost every week in that book one study, and that was one of the two things. He would pull this out every week and say, we're the only ones that have access to these people in these buildings while we're here for 40 hours plus hours a week. And so that was really an impactful statement. And the other statement that was really impactful to me, Jeff, was he would talk about that, our goal should be to work in such a way that people would ask us, like, "What, man, there's something different about you. What's different about you?" And then that gives you an opportunity to share the good news.
So how about struggles for you, Angie? Anything that's been, as you thought about your pursuit of integrating your faith in your work, what do you struggle with?
I think my biggest struggle is just being courageous in saying yes to God's opportunities, whether that's professionally at work or whether that's gentle nudges where He wants me to talk to people about Him at work. So I think that's probably been my biggest, since I had my last son about 4 years ago, I struggled with, do I stay home? Do I stay at rack space? And so if I take this, job opportunity, is it going to mess up my work-life balance? And so I've struggled with, when God presents an opportunity, I'm like, I'm good, just saying yes to those opportunities. So I've sort of broken free of those chains, I felt like about 7 or 8 months ago. And so it's a really freeing feeling, and I've seen God, just work in amazing ways.
Can I ask a question? Because I want Angie to share something that she shared when we visited the other day, and that is, you recently took on a new team, and I want you to explain kind of your thought process in getting those new folks, because it's a great challenge, because it shows a mindset that is God-centered first, and how she can not only serve them as a leader, but serve them as, here's Christ.
Sure. So in September, I moved teams slightly, and so I had a new group of rackers that some I had never met before. And so my goal was to find out what all of their beliefs were, because then I would know, can I ask them if they would like to be added to the list, for one, and then two, I know that I can talk to them in one-on-ones about God. And so there's probably 30-something people on my team, and I'm probably 75% of the way done. Some of the tech guys, it's a little bit harder sometimes to get to that conversation in a one-on-one, and some of them are remote, so it takes a little longer to build that relationship, but that was my mindset going in. So there's 16 people so far on my team that are on the list. So it's pretty amazing. I'm blessed that there's so many Christians on my team.
That's great. What, if you have one final thing to share with us about what compels you or what helps you to live in God's larger story in your work, what would you share with us?
What compels me to do it? Our company has, and like all companies go through these different phases, we've seen lots of challenges. What could be perceived as challenges in the past year, couple of years, whether it was, as a company, we went from being a public company to a private company. That freaked a bunch of people out. We had several folks, a decent amount of folks went through a layoff, and so there were a lot of folks who were left behind with us at Rackspace, and that freaked them out because friends who were sitting at the desk next to them in the morning weren't there in the afternoon, and that messed them up. We have a beloved brother who has been leading our company for the past several years and has been around for many years at Rackspace, and God's calling him elsewhere. That's got everybody freaked out. But it's an opportunity to get to minister to folks, to get to meet them where they are. As Angie said, I would challenge folks to do your job so well that people ask why. And also, do your job so well that when you stop and take an extra 15 minutes to talk to somebody about God's greater mission and part of their life, that doesn't, people realize you're not shirking your work responsibilities. You've done that, and you've checked that box 5 times. And so the challenge, I think, really is and what keeps me going is there's just a lot of hurting people in there. It's a tech company, so it can be a liberal place. And it is great to get to love on people. I get access to people at Rackspace that I don't get access to in my personal life. There are more homosexuals that I come into contact with. There are more people with alternate views. There are more people who I just don't get a chance to talk to. All ethnic backgrounds and whatnot, and you just get to love on them. And it's a great challenge from God for me to get outside of my comfort zone and to be God to them.
Yeah. So as you both walked through that, were there opportunities to visit, just to encourage or uplift other people? Obviously, you pray for them. Anything because I know that's a very somber. It's a hard experience to go through. So, you see any opportunities there?
Yes, on the day that we had to lay off people, I think it was February of this year. It was 6% of our workforce, so about 285 people. So quite a lot for us. That was our biggest one, and so I just sent an email to the list that day and said, hey, we're going to pray at noon, whether you're able to make it. We're going to be in this room at noon to pray for everybody. If you're not, just pray wherever you're at. Just let us know that you're praying. So. There's probably about 15 people that joined us that day, and so that's one way that we can just rally together. Last week was National Day of Prayer, so we got about 25 people that joined us, and we got together and prayed for our nation and our leaders, and just a whole bunch of great things. We got to send our CEO, who's moving on, as Jeff mentioned,
and who is here. And I think he joined you, is that right? He
joined us both times that I just mentioned on the day of layoffs and for the National Day of Prayer. So we got to pray a blessing over him. It was really special.
Wow, very, very touching. How about you, Angie? Anything that helps? You can share one thing with us about what keeps that. You talked about fire in you, and that I've thought about that often after our conversation a few weeks ago of just what keeps that fire going in you to keep living in the larger story of your work?
I think just staying connected to God. So if I don't, listen to a message in the morning on the drive into work, if I don't stay connected to Him throughout the day, then I'm not producing the fruits of the Spirit, and so I'm not doing God's work. So I would say that's what really keeps me on fire, is staying connected to Him and feeling that peace and joy that surpasses understanding, that is regardless of any circumstance that's going on at work. Most of the time, God gives you that peace, and so, just living that abundant life here on earth, it's going to be amazing when we get to heaven. I'm looking forward to that, but right now, God tells us we can thrive, and He wants us to live an abundant life, and so, that peace and that joy that God has given me, I just want to share that so badly with other people. So that's what drives me.
And you do, bless you. It's just so good also today to have different professions here. You know, I look around and I know many of you and see the different professions from business, education, military, obviously our government. Pleasure to have Mayor Ivy Taylor with us this morning. And that this transcends all work.
Amen.
And so as you discuss now at the table with some of the questions we have there, let's think about what God may be doing to help us decompartmentalize and desecularize the way that we work. So table hosts, if you'll go ahead and start discussion, we'll be back together in about 15 minutes.